A single dad nurse is running on empty 3 straight days without sleep, fighting to save strangers while his little girl waits at home, scared he'll never come back. But when he sits beside a dying patient who whispers her final words, everything changes. Because she doesn't just leave behind memories, she leaves him something shocking, something that could either save his daughter's future or destroy everything he's holding together. But why would a dying woman choose him? What secret tied their lives together long before they ever met? And when powerful forces rise to rip it away, will this broken father find the strength to keep the door open or lose it all? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The wind howled against the hospital windows like something alive and angry, rattling the old frames until they groaned. Snow piled against the glass in thick drifts, turning the world outside into a wall of white nothing. Inside, the emergency department buzzed with controlled chaos, monitors beeping, phones ringing, wheels squeaking across linoleum that hadn't seen a proper cleaning in 2 days. Eli Brooks pressed his palms against the break room sink, watching pink water swirl down the drain, blood from a nosebleed patient. Or maybe from the teenager who'd crashed his car into a telephone pole. The shifts blurred together after 50 hours. You looked like death warmed over. Sarah, the charge nurse, stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee. The bags under her eyes matched his own, feel about the same. Eli dried his hands on paper towels that felt like sandpaper. Thanks. The coffee tasted burnt and bitter, perfect for cutting through the fog in his head. Sarah leaned against the counter, studying him with the look she reserved for patients who insisted they were fine when they clearly weren't. When's the last time you went home? Thursday. He checked his watch. Sunday now. Or was it Monday? The storm had eaten time, turned it into something meaningless. Eli, we're down 4 nurses. Martinez can't get through the roads. Neither can Peterson. He pulled out his phone, thumb finding Gracie's number by muscle memory. Just need 5 minutes. Sarah nodded and left, closing the door with a soft click. The FaceTime connected on the 3rd ring. Gracie's face filled the screen, her brown curls wild around her face, her mother's eyes bright despite the late hour. "Daddy." "Hey, baby girl." The exhaustion in his bones eased, just a little. Behind her, he could make out Mrs. Chen's living room, the older woman's collection of ceramic cats visible on the shelf. "You being good for Mrs. Chen?" "She made soup, with the little star noodles." Gracie disappeared for a moment, then returned, holding up a piece of construction paper. The word courage stretched across it in purple marker, surrounded by hearts and what looked like stick figure nurses wearing capes. "I made this for you, for your locker." His throat tightened. "It's perfect. When are you coming home?" The question hung between them, heavy as the snow outside. Gracie didn't whine or plead. At 10, she'd learned the particular patience of a nurse's daughter, a single parent's child. "Soon as I can." The roads, "I know." She pulled her blanket tighter, a fuzzy pink thing covered in unicorns that she'd had since she was 5. "Mrs. Chen says the storm's supposed to stop tomorrow. That's good news." "Daddy?" Her voice dropped, smaller now. "You're not going to get stuck there forever, right?" "No, baby. Never forever." He forced his voice steady, the same tone he used with patients who needed reassurance more than truth. "Just until the storm passes." She nodded, solemn as a judge. "I put your pillow in my room, so it smells like you when you get back." The ache in his chest had nothing to do with exhaustion. "I love you, Gracie girl. Love you too. Be careful, okay? Don't forget to eat something." "Yes, ma'am." She giggled, the sound bright as church bells, then waved goodbye. The screen went dark. Eli stared at his reflection in the black glass. Stubble he couldn't remember growing, eyes shot through with red veins. His scrubs hung loose on his frame. When had he last eaten something more than a granola bar? The break room door burst open. "Brooks, need you on the floor." "Now." Jackie, the triage nurse, looked frazzled. More than usual. What have we got? Everything. 2 more MVAs just came in, lady in labor who can't make it to obstetrics, and, she paused, something shifting in her expression. We just admitted an elderly woman, late-stage heart failure, bed 412. Family with her? No. Came in alone. Neighbor found her when they lost power, called 911. Jackie lowered her voice. She asked for someone to sit with her, actually asked. Said she didn't want to be alone if she didn't finish. Didn't need to. I'll take her. You sure? You've already got 6 patients, and with the trauma coming in, I said I'll take her. Jackie nodded, already moving toward the next crisis. Laverne Mayfield, 82. Charts at the station. Eli downed the last of his coffee, tossed the cup, and headed for the floor. The hallway stretched ahead, endless under the fluorescent lights. Somewhere, a machine beeped its urgent rhythm. Somewhere else, a child cried. The storm pressed against the windows, trying to get in, but the hospital held. It always held. He thought of Gracie's drawing, courage in purple marker, and kept walking. Room 412 waited at the end of the hall, its door slightly open, spilling warm yellow light into the corridor. From inside came a sound, soft, rhythmic, like someone humming. Or trying to. Eli paused at the threshold, took a breath that tasted of disinfectant and exhaustion, and knocked gently on the doorframe. Mrs. Mayfield, I'm Eli. I'll be your nurse tonight. The woman in bed 412 looked smaller than her 82 years should have made her. Laverne Mayfield sat propped against 3 pillows, her dark skin ashen beneath the hospital lights, each breath a careful negotiation with her failing heart. But her eyes, sharp as winter wind, tracked Eli's movement as he entered. You're the one who's been here 3 days straight. Not a question. Her voice carried the worn velvet quality of a church soprano who'd sung every Sunday for decades. Eli checked her IV line, keeping his hand steady despite the tremor of exhaustion. News travels fast around here. Nurses talk. Always have. She studied him with those keen eyes. When's the last time you ate something real? I should be asking you that, Mrs. Mayfield. Call me Laverne. And don't deflect. I taught middle school for 37 years. I know tired when I see it. The oxygen monitor beeped. Her levels dipped, then stabilized. Eli adjusted the flow, his movements automatic after countless similar moments. Your chart says you came in alone. Storm took the power. My neighbor, bless her, she tried to get me to go with her to her daughter's place. But I'm stubborn. A ghost of a smile crossed her lips. Guess that's catching up with me now. Eli pulled the visitor's chair closer to her bed. The night stretched ahead, and something in Laverne's manner told him she needed presence more than procedures. Your family, should I call someone? My granddaughter's in Chicago. Haven't spoken in 2 years. My fault as much as hers. She shifted, wincing. Pride's a luxury I can't afford anymore. The wind howled against the windows. Down the hall, someone called for assistance with a trauma patient. Eli's body tensed to respond, but Laverne's hand, paper dry and surprisingly strong, caught his wrist. They've got it. You stay. He settled back in the chair. You asked for someone to sit with you. I did. Dying alone seems wasteful. All these stories, all these years, and nobody to hand them to. She closed her eyes briefly. You know what that's like? Having things you need to pass on, but nobody to receive them? Eli thought of Gracie's drawing, of the empty side of his bed that still felt wrong after 2 years, of the boxes in the attic he couldn't bring himself to open. Yes. Laverne's eyes opened, studying him anew. You lost someone. My wife. Cancer. How long? 2 years, 3 months, 11 days. You count the days. That's love. She shifted again, breathing shallow. I counted 2. My Herbert's been gone 8 years now. Had a barber shop on Maple Street. You know it? The old place with the striped pole? That's the one. Sat empty since he passed. I couldn't. She paused, gathering breath. Couldn't bear to sell it. Couldn't bear to open it either. Just another thing I'm leaving unfinished. The monitor beeped again. This time the dip lasted longer. Eli stood, checking her vitals, adjusting medications with practiced efficiency. Laverne watched him work, that sharp gaze never wavering. You move like my Herbert did. Careful, deliberate. Like your hands are doing prayer. Marine Corps taught me that. Combat medic before I was a nurse. Serving others, always serving. She caught his hand again as he finished adjusting her IV. But who's checking on you, Eli? The question hit somewhere deep, somewhere he kept locked. I manage. That's not what I asked. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Gracie's asleep. Used her inhaler once, but she's breathing fine now. Don't worry. Don't worry. As if worry wasn't woven into his bones, into every extra shift he took to pay for her medications, her school supplies, the counseling sessions that helped her process losing her mother. Your little one? Laverne asked, noticing his frown. She has asthma. Stress makes it worse. And you being gone is stress. Being homeless would be worse stress. The words escaped before he could stop them. Exhaustion had eroded his filters. Laverne's expression softened. Bills coming due? They always are. Herbert used to say that money's just time with a price tag on it. You're selling all your time, aren't you? Eli adjusted her blanket, not answering. I need you to write something down, Laverne said suddenly. Her voice carried new urgency. There's paper in that drawer. He found a small notepad and pen. Write this. Tell Tasha the lockbox key is taped under Psalm 121. She waited while he wrote, then reached for the chain around her neck, fingers fumbling with the clasp. Help me with this. The chain held a small, bent brass key. Nothing special about it except the way she cradled it in her palm like something precious. This was to Herbert's shop. Been meaning to give it to someone who'd understand what it meant, what it could mean again. She pressed it into Eli's hand, her fingers cold but insistent. For when I can't sing anymore. Laverne, I can't. You can and you will. That's not a gift, it's a responsibility. You understand those, don't you? The key sat heavy in his palm, warm from her skin. Down the hall, another trauma arrived, voices rising in controlled chaos. But here in room 412, time moved differently, shaped by the rhythm of Laverne's labored breathing and the weight of things unsaid. Tell me about the barber shop, Eli said, pocketing the key. Tell me about Herbert. And she did, her voice growing stronger with memory, painting pictures of a place where men of all colors had sat in the same chairs, where children had learned to read while waiting for haircuts, where dignity had been dispensed along with hot lather and careful conversation. Outside the storm raged on, but inside room 412, stories became bridges between heartbeats, keeping the darkness at bay just a little longer. The storm hammered the hospital windows like fists demanding entry. Eli made his rounds through the ICU, but his path always curved back to room 412. Each time, he expected to find Laverne's bed empty, her fight over. Each time, she proved him wrong. Back again, soldier nurse? Her voice carried more strength at 3 a.m. than it had at midnight. Color had crept back into her cheeks, faint as watercolor, but there. Just checking your vitals. You checked them 20 minutes ago. She watched him adjust her oxygen levels anyway. You always hover over your patients like this? Only the stubborn ones. She laughed, a sound like autumn leaves rustling. Herbert would have liked you. He collected strays too. Men who needed a place to sit and be seen. Really seen. Eli recorded her improved numbers on the chart. Her oxygen saturation had climbed from 88 to 94. Small victories. Speaking of Herbert's business, Laverne gestured toward the visitor's chair where a manila envelope sat, thick with official weight. My lawyer stopped by earlier. Mr. Morrison. Fussy little man with hands that shake when he's nervous. During a blizzard? Said it couldn't wait. Made the security guard sign for it and everything. She studied Eli's face. I need you to take it. Laverne, but you can't open it. Not yet, only after I'm gone. Eli's hands stilled on her IV line. You're not going anywhere. Your numbers are improving. We both know better than that. This is just my body's last little dance. One more song before the music stops. She pointed at the envelope again. Promise me. Take it. Keep it safe. But don't open it until after. Why me? Because you understand duty. Because you show up even when everything in you wants to run. Because you need what's in there, even if you don't know it yet. Eli picked up the envelope. His name was written across the front in shaky cursive. The weight of it felt wrong somehow, too heavy for mere paper. Promise me, Laverne pressed. I promise. On your daughter. I promise on Gracie's life. I won't open it until... He couldn't finish. Until I'm singing with the angels. There, wasn't so hard. She settled back into her pillows. Now, go put that somewhere safe and get some rest. You look worse than I do. He started to protest, but she waved him off. That's an order, Marine. Eli tucked the envelope under his arm and headed to the break room. His locker squeaked open, revealing the detritus of 3 days. Empty coffee cups, protein bar wrappers, phone charger tangled with stethoscope. He slid the envelope behind his spare scrubs, then stood there, hand on the metal door. Brooks. Nancy, the charge nurse, appeared beside him. When's the last time you actually slept? I caught a few minutes earlier. Horizontal? When were you last horizontal? He couldn't remember. Supply closet? Now. She steered him down the hall. 2 hours minimum, or I'm calling Gracie's school myself and telling them her daddy's being reckless. The supply closet held a worn cot that had hosted countless exhausted staff. Eli collapsed onto it, still in his scrubs. The pillow smelled like industrial laundry soap and other people's dreams. 2 hours, Nancy repeated, clicking off the light. The floor won't collapse without you. Darkness swallowed him whole. No dreams, just the deep black of pure exhaustion. When Nancy shook him awake, his body felt like it had been reassembled wrong, joints stiff, mouth dry as gauze. It's 6:30. Thought you'd want to call Gracie before school. Guilt crashed through him. 2 whole hours. What if Laverne had needed him? What if... She's stable, Nancy said, reading his panic. Actually better. That old bird's tougher than she looks. Eli fumbled for his phone, checked the time, calculated. Mrs. Chen would be getting Gracie ready for school. He hit video call and waited. Gracie's face filled the screen, pink pajamas, hair in messy braids. Daddy. Hey, sweet pea. You sleep okay? I used my inhaler once, but I'm okay now. Mrs. Chen's making pancakes. Behind her, Mrs. Chen waved a spatula. The kitchen looked warm, normal, everything his life wasn't. Daddy, look what I made. Gracie disappeared, then returned with a poster board. In careful crayon letters, Daddy, you're my hero. She'd drawn him in blue scrubs with a red cape, standing next to a hospital bed where stick figures smiled. His chest cracked open, love and guilt flooding in equal measure. It's for your locker. So when you're tired, you can remember. It's perfect, baby. I love it. When are you coming home? Soon as the storm breaks. Tomorrow, maybe. Promise? That word again. Everyone wanting promises he wasn't sure he could keep. I'll try my best. Trying's not promising, Gracie said, but gently, like she was the parent. But it's okay, heroes are busy. Mrs. Chen appeared in frame. School bus comes in 20 minutes, we're all set here. Thank you. I'll pay you back for neighbors help neighbors, Eli. Stop worrying. After they hung up, he sat in the dark supply closet, holding his phone. The poster Gracie made glowed in his mind. Hero. She saw him as a hero while he felt like he was drowning, each shift pulling him deeper underwater. Back on the floor, the controlled chaos of morning shift change had begun. Eli splashed cold water on his face, grabbed fresh coffee, and headed to room 412. Laverne was awake, watching the snow fall lighter now, the storm finally tiring. "You rested," she said. "Not a question. 2 hours." "Good. You'll need your strength for what's coming." Evening came like a thief, stealing what little strength Laverne had left. Eli noticed the change during his 7 o'clock rounds. Her breathing had shifted from steady to shallow, each inhale a conscious effort. "Page me for anything," he told the aide, though he knew he'd be back within the hour anyway. He was back in 20 minutes. Laverne's hands were ice against his warm ones. Her nail beds had taken on that bluish tinge that meant circulation was failing. The monitors told the story in declining numbers, but Eli watched her face instead. "You came back," she whispered. "Always do." Her fingers curled weakly around his. "The doors." "What doors?" "Stay open. Promise me." "Doors stay open." Eli squeezed her hand, feeling the bones through paper-thin skin. "I promise. Don't forget." Each word cost her. "When everything tries to close them, you remember." The night crawled forward in measured breaths and slowing heartbeats. Eli adjusted pillows, moistened her lips with sponges, held her hand when tremors shook through her. Other nurses came and went, but he stayed. At 3 in the morning she opened her eyes wide, looking past him at something he couldn't see. "James?" she called out. "That you?" "It's Eli. I'm right here." But she was seeing elsewhere, maybe elsewhen. Her face softened, years falling away. Been waiting so long. The cardiac monitor's rhythm grew irregular. Eli knew this dance, had seen it hundreds of times, but somehow this felt different. Personal. "You want me to call anyone?" "Tasha?" Laverne's gaze snapped back to the present, to him. You're who needs to be here." "Okay. I'm not going anywhere." "Good soldier." Her voice barely disturbed the air. "Good father. Remember. The doors." Her breathing spaced out. 10 seconds between breaths. 20. The monitor's beeps stretched longer apart, like a song slowing down. Eli found himself humming "Blessed Assurance" again, the same hymn from their first meeting. Laverne's lips curved into the ghost of a smile. At 4:47 a.m., between one breath and the next that never came, Laverne Mayfield left the world as quietly as morning light touches a window. Her hand went slack in his. The monitor sang its single, endless note. Eli reached over and silenced the alarm. For a moment, he just sat there, still holding her hand, the room filling with that particular quiet that comes after. Then he stood, straightened her blankets one last time, and closed her eyes with gentle fingers. His phone felt heavy as he scrolled through Laverne's emergency contacts. Rev Cole answered on the second ring, voice alert despite the hour. "This is Eli Brooks at County General. I'm calling about Laverne Mayfield." A pause. "She's gone home, hasn't she?" "Yes, sir. About 5 minutes ago. Peaceful." "Was she alone?" No, sir. I was with her." "Good. Good. She always said she didn't want to travel that road solo." "Rev." Cole's voice carried the weight of countless such calls. "I'll be there within the hour. Thank you, son, for staying with her." After the mortuary team took Laverne away, after the bed was stripped and sanitized, after the room stood empty and waiting for its next occupant, Eli sat in the break room. The envelope in his locker seemed to pulse with presence. He pulled it out, turned it over in his hands. His name stared back at him in Laverne's shaky script. "Not yet," she'd said after. But after felt too immediate, too raw. He slipped it into his jacket pocket and finally headed home. The storm had blown itself out overnight, leaving the town buried under 2 feet of snow that sparkled in the morning sun. Eli's truck crawled through the quiet streets. Everything looked clean, transformed, like the world had been remade while he wasn't watching. His apartment door opened before he could get his key out. Gracie stood there in her school clothes, already dressed, though it was barely 7. "Daddy!" She crashed into him, arms wrapping tight around his waist. He dropped his bag and held her, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her small heart beat against him. "Missed you so much," she whispered into his chest. "Missed you too, sweet pea." Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. "I heard the truck. Gracie insisted on waiting to eat breakfast with you. You didn't have to. She wanted her daddy." Mrs. Chen gathered her things. "There's coffee made. Get some rest, Eli. You look like death warmed over." After she left, Gracie pulled him to the kitchen table where she'd set 2 places, 2 bowls, 2 spoons, arranged just so. The Cheerios box stood between them like a centerpiece. "It's not much," Gracie said, suddenly shy. "But I wanted us to eat together. It's perfect." They ate in comfortable quiet, the clink of spoons against ceramic the only sound. Gracie kept sneaking glances at him, like she was making sure he was really there. The envelope in his pocket felt heavier with each bite. "Dad, you okay? You look sad." "A patient died this morning. A nice lady." Gracie reached across the table, her small hand covering his. "Was she scared?" "No, I don't think so. She was ready." "That's good then. Being ready." Gracie squeezed his fingers. "Were you with her?" "Yeah." "Then she wasn't alone. That's what matters." Eli looked at his daughter. 10 years old, and already understanding things that took most people decades to learn. The envelope pressed against his ribs, carrying the weight of whatever doors Laverne wanted kept open. The next morning, Eli wrestled Gracie into her good dress while she squirmed and complained about the scratchy collar. Snow still blanketed the town, but the plows had cleared Main Street enough for traffic to crawl through. "Why do we have to go?" Gracie asked, tugging at her tights. We didn't really know her. "Sometimes you show up for people even when you don't know them well. It's the right thing to do." The small brick church sat on the corner of Oak and 3rd, its steeple cutting a sharp line against the gray sky. Cars packed the lot and spilled onto side streets. Eli had to park 3 blocks away. Inside, the sanctuary hummed with bodies and whispered conversations. Every pew was full. The choir loft overflowed with robes in deep purple, and the air hung thick with the smell of lilies and casserole dishes warming in the basement. Eli found 2 seats near the back, helping Gracie slide in beside an elderly man who nodded at them kindly. Up front, Laverne's casket sat closed, draped in white roses. A large photograph showed her younger, vibrant, standing beside a barbershop pole with a tall man in a crisp white barber's coat, her late husband, Eli, guessed. The organ swelled, and Rev. Cole took the pulpit. He didn't ease into it. His voice boomed across the sanctuary. Laverne Mayfield kept doors open. He let that hang in the air. Not just any doors, the hard ones, the ones folks wanted to nail shut. Back in '64, when this town drew lines down the middle of everything, water fountains, lunch counters, hearts, Laverne and her husband Earl kept their shop door open to everyone. Cost them windows. Cost them customers. They kept it open anyway. Gracie leaned against Eli's shoulder, listening intently. Across the aisle, a young woman sat rigid in the back row, arms crossed. 17, maybe 18, with Laverne's same sharp cheekbones and assessing eyes. She stared straight ahead while the congregation around her dabbed at tears. "She gave scholarships," Reverend Cole continued, his voice rising and falling in the rhythm of practiced preaching. "Quiet ones. Never put her name on them. How many of you sitting here got through school because an envelope showed up when you couldn't make tuition?" Several hands rose tentatively throughout the room. More than Eli expected. She sat with the dying, taught Sunday school for 43 years, smuggled books to kids whose parents thought reading was getting above yourself. Laverne Mayfield was a doorkeeper, church, and doorkeepers don't die. They just hand off the keys. The choir rose as one, purple robes rustling, and launched into "Precious Lord." Every voice in the room joined except for the young woman across the aisle. She sat stone still while the hymn washed over the congregation. When an older woman tried to hand her a hymnal, she shook her head sharply. After the service, the basement filled with people balancing paper plates of fried chicken and potato salad. Eli tried to guide Gracie toward the food line, but a man in a crisp suit intercepted them. "Mr. Brooks? I'm James Patterson, Mrs. Mayfield's attorney." He was younger than Eli expected, maybe mid-30s, with a kind of careful precision that suggested he'd grown up in bigger cities than this one. "Could we speak privately?" Mrs. Mayfield left specific instructions. Eli glanced at Gracie, who'd already wandered toward the dessert table where church ladies were cutting sheets of cake. "Just for a moment," Patterson said, steering Eli toward a quiet corner. He pulled out a manila envelope, the same one from the hospital. "She was very clear that you should receive this personally. Said you'd understand about keeping doors open." The envelope felt heavier than paper should. Eli tucked it inside his coat. "There's some urgency to the matter," Patterson added quietly. "Best if you review it soon. Tonight, if possible." Before Eli could ask what he meant, Gracie appeared with 2 pieces of chocolate cake, and Patterson melted back into the crowd. That evening, after Gracie finished her homework and fell asleep over her library book, Eli sat at the kitchen table with the envelope. His coffee had gone cold. Outside, fresh snow began to fall, muffling the world in white quiet. The envelope's seal broke easily. Inside, several documents covered in legal language, and beneath them, a single sheet of paper covered in Laverne's shaky handwriting. "Dear Eli, Earl always said, God puts people where they need to be when they need to be there. You were where I needed you. Now I'm putting you where the town needs you. The barber shop has been closed 12 years. Earl's heart gave out sweeping those floors, getting ready for Saturday morning rush. I couldn't bear to sell it, couldn't bear to open it. But keeping doors closed isn't what we were put here to do. The deed is yours, free and clear. The apartment upstairs too, Earl and I lived there our first 5 years. It's not much, but the bones are good. The only condition, you reopen it as the Laverne House, reading room, free clinic hours, a place for children to read, a place for folks to get their blood pressure checked, a place where doors stay open. You're tired. I saw it. Tired of carrying everything alone. This isn't me adding to your load. This is me offering you a place to set it down. Keep the doors open, Eli, for Gracie, for this town, for yourself." Laverne beneath the letter lay the deed to 314 Washington Street, Earl's barber shop. 2 stories, corner lot, Eli's name already typed in as owner. His hands shook. Not from exhaustion this time, but from something that felt dangerously like hope, a home for Gracie, stability, purpose beyond just surviving each shift. He pulled out his phone and searched the address. Google Street View showed a brick building with a faded barber pole, windows boarded, "For sale," sign listing in the small front yard. But the bones looked good, just like Laverne said. Through the thin apartment walls, he heard Gracie cough in her sleep. Her inhaler sat on the kitchen counter next to her lunch money. Everything they owned fit in this 2-bedroom rental, where the radiator clanged and the super took 3 weeks to fix anything. The deed felt solid in his hands. Real. A door opening when he'd thought they were all closing. Tomorrow he'd drive by, see what 12 years of emptiness looked like. Tonight, though, he just sat at the table, reading Laverne's letter again, letting himself imagine Gracie doing homework in their own kitchen, in their own home, with doors that stayed open for whoever needed to walk through. The next morning arrived too bright, sun glinting off fresh snow like broken glass. Eli hadn't slept. The deed lay on his nightstand where he'd placed it at 3 a.m. after checking 4 times that it was real. "Where are we going?" Gracie asked, pulling on her purple winter coat. Her inhaler rattled in the pocket. "To see something Mrs. Mayfield left us." They walked the 6 blocks from their apartment, Gracie's hand warm in his. Washington Street sat on the edge of downtown, where the old commercial district bled into residential neighborhoods. Number 314 stood on the corner, 2 stories of faded red brick with limestone trim gone gray. The barber pole hung crooked, its spiral stripes barely visible under years of grime. Plywood covered most windows, but one ground floor pane had cracked, offering a glimpse inside. Gracie pressed her face to the gap. "Daddy, there's chairs. And mirrors." Eli looked over her shoulder. 3 barber chairs sat like thrones under dust sheets. Along the far wall, a row of mirrors reflected nothing but shadows. In the corner, 2 small tables held checkerboards, pieces scattered as if the players had just stepped out. "Look up there." Gracie pointed to the second floor, where curtains still hung in windows. "We could live upstairs." The words hit Eli's chest like voltage. We could live upstairs. Not another rental with thin walls and a landlord who threatened eviction every time he was 5 days late. Their own place. "Maybe, baby. We'll see." A silver Lexus pulled up to the curb. 3 people climbed out, a woman in her 50s with Laverne's same sharp cheekbones, a younger man in a suit, and behind them, an attorney carrying a briefcase. "You must be the nurse." The woman's voice carried winter in it. "Eli Brooks. I'm Denise Mayfield Carter, Laverne's cousin." Second cousin, technically, but family nonetheless. She looked at the building like it had personally insulted her. "We need to discuss this situation." "There's no situation." Mrs. Mayfield left clear instructions. She was dying, not in her right mind. "You took advantage." Gracie pressed closer to Eli's leg. The attorney stepped forward. "Richard Fulton, representing the Mayfield family interests. Will be filing to contest the will on grounds of undue influence." A nurse accepting such a significant bequest from a patient raises serious ethical questions. "I didn't know about any of this until after—" "Save it for court." Denise's eyes narrowed. "This place belongs to family. You were just her nurse, some stranger who worked a few shifts." 72 hours straight," Gracie said quietly. Denise barely glanced at her. "Whatever you think you're getting, forget it. This building's worth money. The whole block's being redeveloped." Richard Fulton pulled out his phone. "I'm already in contact with your hospital's legal department. They'll want to know about this breach of professional ethics." The Lexus pulled away, leaving exhaust fumes and dread. Gracie tugged Eli's hand. "Are they going to take it away?" "Not if I can help it." But his phone was already buzzing. "Hospital number." "Mr. Brooks? This is Sharon from HR. We need you to come in this afternoon. There's been a complaint filed regarding professional boundaries with a recently deceased patient." The administrative office smelled like burnt coffee and copy toner. Sharon sat across from him, manila folder open, reading glasses perched on her nose. "You've been with us 4 years, spotless record, but this," she tapped the folder, "a patient leaving you property? That's concerning. I had no idea she was—" "The appearance of impropriety can be as damaging as actual wrongdoing. We're opening a formal ethics review. You'll continue working but under observation. Any findings could affect your license." "Sharon, you know me. I've never—" "I know. But with the gender dynamics, male nurse, elderly female patient, and now significant financial gain, the optics are terrible." His phone vibrated. Text from an unknown number. "This is Marisol Diaz from Child Services. We need to discuss your recent schedule and living situation. Can you meet tomorrow at 10? The walls of the small office seemed to contract. Everything he'd built, everything he'd held together with overtime and willpower and coffee, it was all crumbling. "Am I suspended?" "Not yet." "But Eli," Sharon's voice softened slightly, "be very careful. The family's attorney is well connected. He's already calling this exploitation of a vulnerable adult." Outside, the December air bit sharp. Eli sat in his car for 10 minutes before starting it, hands gripping the wheel. Gracie's school would call soon for pickup. He'd have to smile, help with homework, make dinner, pretend the ground wasn't falling away beneath them. Laverne's letter was still in his pocket. "This isn't me adding to your load." But it was. Her gift had painted a target on his back. The house, the mission, the promise of stability, it all came with a price he might not be able to pay. His phone buzzed again. Text from Rev Cole. Heard about the trouble. Come by the church. We need to talk. Eli started the car. Whatever battle Laverne had just drafted him into, he was already losing ground. The barber shop's key sat heavy in his pocket, a door to something that might destroy everything else before he could even open it. The morning came wrapped in frost. Eli braided Gracie's hair while she ate toast, his fingers working through the familiar rhythm even as his mind churned. The bent key sat on the counter like an accusation. "You're doing my braid crooked, Daddy." "Sorry, baby." He redid the plait, steadier this time. "Got a lot on my mind." "About the mean lady yesterday?" "Among other things." At school drop-off, Gracie paused before getting out. Mom would have liked Mrs. Laverne. The words landed soft but heavy. Eli kissed her forehead. Yeah, she would have. First National Bank stood on Main Street, all marble columns and brass fixtures, trying hard to look important in a town where everyone knew everyone's business. Eli approached the teller Martha, whose son played Little League with Gracie last summer. Safety deposit box, name would be under Laverne Mayfield. Martha's face shifted. "Oh, Eli. I heard about the situation. Such a shame, people fighting over—" She caught herself. "Let me check." The key matched box 471. Martha led him downstairs to a vault that smelled like old paper and metal. She left him alone in a small room with fluorescent lights that hummed too loud. The lockbox opened with a click that echoed. Inside, order. Perfect, deliberate order. Choir programs, dating back 40 years, each one annotated in Laverne's precise handwriting. Beautiful solo by James, Tommy's first time conducting. Marcia sang through her grief. Beneath those, letters. Dozens of them, bound with ribbon. Dear Mrs. Mayfield, I graduated nursing school last week. Without your help, I never would have made it through. Mrs. L., they accepted me to state. The scholarship you gave means I won't have to drop out to work. Laverne, my daughter just got her teaching certificate. 3 generations of teachers now because you believed in a scared girl from the wrong side of town. At the bottom, a leather ledger. Eli opened it carefully. Names, dates, amounts. Page after page of quiet generosity. The Second Chance Scholarship Fund, all funded from Laverne's custodian salary and her late husband's barbershop earnings. He scanned the entries. 1,985. Angela Torres, nursing prerequisites, 500. 1,992. Marcus Johnson, trade school certification, 750. 2001. Patricia Kim. Community college tuition, 200. Then, his hand stopped. 2006. Rebecca Mills, nursing prerequisites, 800. Rebecca Mills. Becca, his Becca. The room tilted. Eli gripped the table edge, staring at his late wife's maiden name in Laverne's careful script. A note beside it. Bright girl, widowed young mother. Deserves her second chance. Widowed young mother. Becca had lost her first husband in a construction accident, left with nothing but debt. She'd been working 3 jobs when she decided to pursue nursing, when she met Eli at orientation, when they fell in love over anatomy flashcards and vending machine coffee. She'd never mentioned a scholarship, never mentioned Laverne. Or had she? Eli's mind raced backward. That church bake sale Becca had insisted on supporting every year, even when money was tight. The way she'd hummed that hymn, Blessed Assurance, while studying. Her insistence that Gracie learn about paying it forward. Another paper tucked behind the ledger. An insurance policy, small but sufficient. Beneficiary, the Laverne House Restoration Fund. A sticky note attached. For when the right person comes along. Eli sat in that fluorescent tomb, surrounded by evidence of a life lived in deliberate kindness. Laverne had been planting seeds for decades, never knowing which ones would grow, never needing credit. His phone buzzed. Text from the school nurse. Gracie had mild asthma attack. She's fine. Using inhaler, but wanted to call you. Then another. HR interview moved to 3 p.m. today. Don't be late. Eli packed everything back carefully, like handling scripture. At the bank entrance, Martha touched his arm. She was something special, wasn't she, Laverne? Yeah, she was. The walk home stretched longer than usual. Eli stopped at the shuttered barber shop, peering through dusty glass. He could almost see it, children reading in corners, blood pressure cuffs on the counter, Laverne's vision made real. But Denise's words echoed, "You were just her nurse." No. He was the husband of a woman Laverne had lifted up, the father of a granddaughter she never got to claim, the keeper of keys she'd collected over a lifetime. That evening, after retrieving Gracie from school, she was fine, just scared. Eli showed her the ledger. Her small finger traced the names. Look, Daddy. So many people. Your mom's name is in there. Gracie found it, reading slowly. Rebecca Mills. That was Mommy before she was Brooks. Mrs. Laverne helped her become a nurse, before I even knew your mom. Gracie looked up, eyes wide with understanding that sometimes comes to children like revelation. It's like she was family before we knew it. The words hung in the air, true and solid. Family you choose, family you discover, family that finds you through decades of quiet grace. Eli's phone buzzed. Calendar reminder. HR interview, p.m. He pulled Gracie close. Tomorrow would bring accusations, investigations, forms to defend his character. But tonight, he held his daughter and the proof of a legacy that stretched back further than he'd imagined. We're going to fight for this, he said quietly. For the building, for all of it. The building, the mission, the story. It's ours to protect now. Gracie nodded solemnly. Mrs. Laverne picked you. She picked us, long before we knew it. Outside, December, darkness fell early. But in the apartment's warm light, father and daughter sat with the ledger between them, reading names of strangers who weren't strangers at all. They were part of a web Laverne had spent a lifetime weaving, each thread placed with purpose, waiting for the pattern to reveal itself. The bent key sat on the table, catching the light. The HR office smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and disappointment. Eli sat across from Margaret Chen, the administrator who'd once smiled at him in hallways but now regarded him like evidence in a case file. Mr. Brooks, you worked 72 consecutive hours during the storm. We were short-staffed. People needed. That's not sustainable. Or safe. She clicked her pen. During that time, you formed a relationship with Mrs. Mayfield. I cared for her, like all my patients. Yet she left you property. Significant property. Margaret spread photos across the desk, the barbershop, the deed, even a screenshot of the funeral where Eli sat with Gracie. Someone had been documenting everything. Did you discuss her estate while providing care? Never. Did you know about the bequest before her death? She mentioned an envelope. Told me not to open it until after. So you did discuss it. Eli's jaw tightened. She spoke. I listened. That's what nurses do. Mr. Brooks, I need to be direct. There are concerns about professional boundaries. A male nurse, working alone with an elderly female patient, accepting what some would call an inappropriate gift. The words, male nurse, hung heavy, loaded with implications Eli had faced his whole career. It wasn't a gift, it's a responsibility. She wanted that place to serve the community. Margaret typed notes, keys clacking like judgment. Did you influence her decision in any way? Maybe she was confused, vulnerable. She was the sharpest person in that hospital, including this room right now. The administrator's eyebrows rose. Eli immediately regretted the comment. We take ethics seriously here, Mr. Brooks. While we investigate, I'd suggest you consider whether accepting this bequest is worth risking your reputation, your position, your ability to provide for your daughter. The last words were surgical, precise. They both knew custody evaluations looked at employment stability. Are we done? For now. We'll be in touch. Eli left with his scrub top damp with sweat he hadn't noticed forming. The hallway stretched forever. Co-workers who usually waved suddenly found their phones fascinating. At pickup, Gracie bounced out from her friend Maya's house, backpack swinging. Maya's mom made cookies. I saved you one. She produced a crumbled sugar cookie from her pocket, lint-speckled but offered with love. Thanks, baby. Can we see the barber shop again, with the keys this time? Eli almost said no, almost drove straight home to hide from the weight of it all. But Gracie's hopeful face won. The door stuck, then gave way with a groan. Dust exploded outward, making them both cough. Gracie pulled her inhaler, took 2 puffs, then pushed forward anyway. Daddy, look! The main room sprawled larger than it seemed from outside. 3 barber chairs stood like sentries, leather cracked but dignified. Mirrors lined one wall, spotted with age. A water-stained poster advertised haircuts for $2. In the corner, checkerboards waited on small tables, pieces scattered like interrupted thoughts. Can you imagine? Eli touched a chair, which spun smoothly despite decades of neglect. Men used to gather here, talk about everything and nothing. Like Maya's mom's kitchen, but for haircuts. Exactly. They found the narrow stairs behind a curtain. Each step creaked a warning, but held. The apartment above was small, a living room that doubled as everything, a galley kitchen with harvest gold appliances, 1 bedroom, a bathroom with black and white tile. But Gracie had found the treasure. Daddy, Daddy, come see. In the bedroom, a window nook jutted out, just big enough for a child to curl up with a book. Someone had built a bench into it, with storage underneath. Late afternoon light poured through, golden and forgiving. My reading spot, Gracie breathed. I could put cushions here, and my lamp, and... Slow down, baby. We don't know but we could live here, if we fix it up? Eli looked around, peeling wallpaper, radiator that probably clanged, floors that sloped toward the center, but also 2 blocks from Gracie's school, above a space that could serve others. A chance to honor both Becca's legacy and Laverne's vision. Maybe, if we can keep it. They explored every corner, Gracie narrating improvements. We could paint this yellow. Put plants here. Fix that cabinet door. Her imagination transformed decay into possibility, the gift of children who see what could be instead of what is. Outside, December, cold bit sharp. Eli locked the door carefully, Gracie still chattering about curtain colors. Mr. Brooks? The voice came smooth as expensive whiskey. A man stood across the street, wool coat too perfect for their neighborhood, shoes that never touched factory floors. He crossed over, hand extended. Rex Fulton. Fulton Development Group. Eli didn't take the hand. I know who you are. Rex smiled, undeterred. Then you know I'm interested in helping this neighborhood reach its potential. By tearing it down, by investing in its future. That building, for instance. It's been an eyesore for years. I could make you a generous offer. Cash. Enough to secure a real home for your daughter. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale, Mr. Brooks. It's just a matter of price. Rex's smile never wavered, but his eyes calculated. I heard there might be some complications with the will. Legal challenges, ethics reviews at your work. Custody evaluations are so stressful, aren't they? For single fathers especially. The threat landed soft as snow, cold as ice. We're done here. Think about it. My offer won't last forever. Rex pulled out a business card, tucked it into the barbershop's door handle. For when you realize I'm trying to help. He walked away, pulling out his phone, already onto the next deal. Gracie tugged Eli's sleeve. I don't like him. Me neither, baby. He looks at our building like it's already gone. Eli knelt down, meeting her eyes. Then we'll have to prove him wrong. The hospital cafeteria hummed with morning shift change. Eli picked at scrambled eggs that tasted like disappointment, while nurses swapped gossip at nearby tables. 3 sugars in his coffee couldn't cut through the exhaustion. Mind if an old preacher sits? Reverend Cole lowered himself across from Eli, his own tray holding toast and black coffee. Age had bent his shoulders, but not his spirit. His eyes still sparked with the fire that filled Sunday sermons. "Heard you had a visitor yesterday." "Rex Fulton. News travels. Always has in this town." Reverend Cole spread grape jelly with careful strokes. "That man's been circling our neighborhood like a vulture for years. Sees broken windows where we see history. He made threats. About custody. Course he did. Man like that only knows one song." The Reverend leaned forward. "But Laverne?" "She knew every hymn in the book, and she chose you to carry her tune. I was just her nurse." "Boy, stop." The word cracked sharp. "You think Laverne Mayfield did anything by accident? That woman planned her grocery list like a military campaign. She saw something in you. Same thing your Becca saw." Eli's throat tightened at his wife's name. "The church is ready to help. Got a whole crew of folks who remember when that barbershop was the heartbeat of the neighborhood. They want to see it breathe again. I don't even know where to start. You start by showing up. Rest follows." By afternoon, Eli barely recognized the sidewalk outside the barbershop. Miss Rodriguez from the beauty shop brought her teenage sons and a shop vac. The Johnson brothers hauled trash bags and telling stories about getting their first haircuts in those very chairs. Mrs. Chen from the corner market supplied sandwiches and bottled water, refusing payment. "Laverne tutored my Amy for free," she said. "Every Tuesday for 2 years." The door stood propped open, December air chasing out decades of mustiness. Eli swept while Gracie sorted through boxes of old magazines, delighted by the vintage advertisements. The work felt like prayer, each sweep of the broom an act of faith. "So you're the one." Tasha stood in the doorway, 17 and armored in skepticism. Her grandmother's eyes, her grandmother's stubborn chin, but wrapped in hurt that made her look older. "Tasha, I'm glad I'm not here to help. Just wanted to see what you stole." The volunteers grew quiet. "Mrs. Chen touched Eli's arm in support, but he stepped forward alone. "Your grandmother left very specific instructions." "Yeah? Well, she left us too. Mom and me. Chose this place over family every time." Tasha's voice cracked, revealing the child under the anger. "Choir practice, committee meetings, scholarship funds for strangers while we scraped by. She talked about you constantly." "Sure she did." Eli walked to his backpack, pulled out the ledger he'd been studying, found the page, handed it over. "Look at the names." Tasha snatched it, ready to throw it back, then stopped. Her finger traced down the entries, dates and amounts, in Laverne's precise handwriting. She found what Eli had marked Rebecca Brooks, 500, nursing prerequisites. "Your wife?" 5 years before I met her. Your grandmother helped her become a nurse. Without that scholarship, Becca never would have been at the hospital where we met." Tasha stared at the entry. Other names jumped out, her own mother's, though she probably hadn't known. Laverne had written simply, "Anonymous donor," on official forms. She never said. She rarely did. The girl's armor cracked. She gave away everything: time, money, love. Spread it so thin we got crumbs. Maybe she was teaching us to share the bread. Tasha laughed bitter. "You sound like her. All parables and purpose." She clutched the ledger against her chest. "I'm taking this. It belongs with family." Something shifted in her face, surprised that he agreed. She left without another word, but her shoulders curved around the ledger like she was carrying something precious. That night, Eli and Gracie sat on the dusty apartment floor, Chinese takeout containers between them. Someone had donated an old camping lantern that threw shadows on the walls. Through the window, the hospital lights blinked in the distance. "We could put the couch here," Gracie pointed with chopsticks. "TV there, but not a big one. We need room for bookshelves. Lots of bookshelves. And plants. Mama loved plants. They'd avoided mentioning Becca all day, but here, in the quiet, she felt present, not haunting blessing. Think she would have liked it? Gracie asked. She would have been painting already, probably some crazy color we'd learned to love. Purple? Knowing your mama? Probably. Gracie scooted closer, tucking under his arm. Her inhaler poked from her pocket, rainbow stickers peeling at the edges. Downstairs, the barber shop held its breath, waiting to live again. Outside, December pressed against windows they'd need to seal better, but inside, for the first time since Becca died, the word home didn't hurt to think. It sat there between them, fragile as hope, solid as the old wood floors. Daddy? Yeah, baby? We belong here. Not a question, a declaration. And feeling her certainty, the small, fierce weight of her against his side, Eli let himself believe it might be true. Saturday arrived wrapped in winter sun, the kind that promised nothing but gave light anyway. By 9 o'clock the sidewalk bustled with volunteers. Mr. Garcia brought his ladder and toolbox. The church quilting circle carried fabric squares and determination. Even Dr. Patel from the hospital showed up, sleeves rolled, ready to scrub. Never saw you with a mop before, Eli called from his perch near the window, paintbrush dripping white. Never saw you as a landlord before. Not a landlord, a keeper. Same thing, different heart. Gracie knelt beside Mrs. Washington, sorting donated books into piles. Picture books here, mysteries there, the old woman's hands teaching patience as they smoothed each spine. Your grandmother loved mysteries, Mrs. Washington told her. Not your blood grandmother, Laverne. She was everybody's grandmother. Did she read to kids here? Honey, she read to anyone who'd listen. Grown men getting haircuts would end up hearing whole chapters. The paint fumes mixed with pine sol and hope. Someone had brought a radio that played gospel, then Motown, then back to gospel. The Johnson brothers argued about which wall should hold the bookshelves, while their wives redirected them toward actually building something. By noon, the transformation showed. Fresh white trim made the windows look awake. The floor, mopped and waxed, reflected light it hadn't seen in years. Someone had donated 24 folding chairs and a coffee urn that wheezed but worked. Looking alive, Rev, Cole announced, carrying in a box of paper cups. Looking ready. Evening fell gentle, and the gathering came together without formal invitation. People just knew. They filled the folding chairs, children on laps, babies passed between arms. The coffee urn gurgled. Someone had made cocoa on a hot plate, marshmallows floating like tiny promises. Rev Cole stood near the old barber chair, now draped with a quilt from the church ladies. His voice carried without shouting. Laverne Mayfield believed in open doors, not just unlocked open, ready to receive whoever needed to enter. He looked at Eli, then Gracie, then the crowd. This is not just brick and mortar, it's breath for weary souls. It's a place to remember that we belong to each other. Amens rippled through the room. Mrs. Chen's daughter started a hymn, tentative at first, then stronger as voices joined. The walls seemed to lean in, remembering their own history of song. Movement at the door caught everyone's attention. Tasha stood there, holding the ledger against her chest like armor. She'd changed clothes, less defensive, softer somehow. Tasha, Reverend Cole smiled, your grandmother's voice lives in you. Would you share it? The room held its breath. Eli saw her fingers tighten on the ledger, knuckles pale. Then she opened it, not to the financial records but to a choir program pressed between pages. Her voice started shaky. This is from 1997. Grandma wrote it for the youth choir. She cleared her throat. Walk through the door that fear would close. Sing through the silence pain would impose. Love through the breaking, hope through the night. Tomorrow needs your candle's light. Children listened rapt. Adults dabbed eyes. Tasha's voice grew stronger with each line, and when she finished, the quiet that followed felt holy. She blinked hard, fast, trying to push back what wanted to fall. Thank you, child, Rev, Cole said simply. She nodded once and found a chair in the back, still clutching the ledger but sitting, staying. The door opened again, bringing December cold and Rex Fulton's cologne. His cashmere coat looked wrong against the folding chairs and paper cups, but his smile practiced enough to seem sincere. "What a wonderful gathering," he said, voice smooth as his hair. Community renewal at its finest. People shifted, uncomfortable. Reverend Cole's jaw tightened. Eli stood slowly, paintbrush still in his back pocket. "Mr. Fulton, please, Rex. We're neighbors, after all." He surveyed the room with developer's eyes, measuring square footage and profit margins. "I've been watching your progress. Admirable. But perhaps we should discuss the bigger picture." "This is the bigger picture," Rex chuckled. "Nostalgia is beautiful, Mr. Brooks, but this block needs serious revitalization. I'm prepared to make a very generous offer. You could fund 10 reading rooms with what I'm proposing." "Not interested. You haven't heard the number." "Don't need to." Rex's smile flickered. "These old buildings, fires happen, pipes burst, insurance gets complicated. Not quite a threat, but close enough. Sometimes the kindest thing is to let the past rest and build something new." "Mrs. Washington stood up, all 5 feet of her. "Boy, I taught your daddy 3rd grade. He'd be ashamed of you talking slick in a holy space." Rex's composure cracked. He recovered quickly, but the damage was done. "I'm simply offering options. Progress doesn't have to be painful." "Neither does leaving, Doctor," Patel said quietly. Rex left, but his cologne lingered like a warning. Later, after everyone had gone, Eli and Gracie walked home through empty streets. She'd been quiet during cleanup, and he knew something was brewing. "What is it, baby?" She kicked at a chunk of ice. "Kids at school. They said things." "What kind of things?" "That we're poor now. That you live in a broken shop. That Mom would be embarrassed." The words hit like physical blows. Eli stopped walking, knelt to her level. "You know what I see when I look at that building?" "What?" "Same thing you drew in your picture, a castle. Every palace begins with a stone, Gracie. We're just laying the first ones." She studied his face, then nodded. "Rex Fulton is like the dragon, right?" "Maybe. But you know what happens to dragons in stories? They lose, every time." They walked on, her hand in his, while behind them the barber shop stood waiting, windows gleaming in streetlight like eyes keeping watch. Monday arrived with teeth. The call from HR came before Eli's coffee cooled, the administrator's voice clinical as February air. "Mr. Brooks, your case remains under review. The investigation into potential boundary violations continues. We'll need additional documentation regarding your interactions with Mrs. Mayfield. I've provided everything. We'll determine what's sufficient. Meanwhile, your suspension stands." The line went dead. Eli stared at his phone, then at Gracie eating cereal across the table. She'd drawn hearts on her lunch bag with marker, unaware her world balanced on bureaucratic whims. At 9 sharp, Marisol Diaz knocked. The social worker entered carrying files thick enough to choke on, her expression caught between sympathy and professional distance. "We need to talk strategy." They sat at the kitchen table while Gracie played upstairs. Marisol spread papers like tarot cards, each one holding a piece of their future. "The court sees your work history dedicated, admirable. But 72-hour shifts?" She tapped a highlighted section. "That's ammunition for anyone questioning your ability to provide stable care." "I was keeping people alive during a storm." "I know that. You know that. But the judge sees numbers on paper." She pulled out another form. "The housing situation helps having a permanent address through the barbershop. But this will contest this HR investigation. Eli, you need to show overwhelming community support, not just words, evidence." "Like what?" "Letters, witnesses. Proof that Gracie thrives despite the challenges." Marisol's eyes softened. "I'm on your side. But the system doesn't run on good intentions." After she left, Eli sat in the quiet kitchen, listening to Gracie's footsteps above. Every creak of the old house sounded like judgment. By evening, the barber shop hummed with different energy. Volunteers had worked through the afternoon, Mrs. Chen hanging quilts, her church group stitched, Dr. Patel arranging folding chairs in neat rows. The space smelled of fresh paint and old books, hope and history mixing in the air. Gracie stood on a stepladder, carefully taping her poster to the wall. "Doors stay open here," in purple marker, surrounded by drawn hands of different colors reaching toward a sun. Her tongue stuck out in concentration. "Higher, Daddy?" "Perfect right there." Tasha arrived carrying a box of children's books donated by the library. She'd been coming daily since Saturday, still prickly but present. She arranged the books by reading level without being asked, her movements efficient. "You came back," Eli said. Books needed sorting. She didn't look up. Grandma hated disorder. At 6 o'clock, they propped the door open despite December's bite. Within minutes, children tumbled in, pulled by curiosity and their parents' gentle pushes. Mrs. Washington led a parade of elderly neighbors, each clutching church bulletins about the opening. Rev. Cole had spread the word. "Come as you are. All welcome." The reading corner filled first. Tasha sat cross-legged on a donated rug, a picture book spread across her lap. 7 children circled her, eyes wide as she read about dragons and knights, using different voices for each character. When she roared for the dragon part, the littlest one shrieked with delight. Eli watched her transform the guarded teenager, becoming something softer, letting Laverne's gift for storytelling flow through her. She caught him looking and quickly turned the page, but not before he saw her almost smile. In the opposite corner, he'd set up a basic health station, blood pressure cuff, thermometer, hand sanitizer, and a notebook for recording vitals. Mr. Jefferson was first in line, rolling up his sleeve. "Haven't checked this in months," he admitted. "Let's fix that. 145/90. Eli made a note, spoke quietly about medication and diet. Mr. Jefferson nodded, grateful for attention that didn't cost a copay. The line grew. Mrs. Kim with her arthritis questions. Young Marcus's mother worried about his persistent cough. Eli listened, advised, referred when needed. This was nursing at its purest, meeting people where they stood. Flash. The local newspaper photographer captured Gracie offering cookies to Reading Circle children. Flash. Tasha mid-gesture, bringing the storybook dragon to life. Flash. Eli checking Mrs. Washington's blood sugar, while she regaled him with stories about teaching Rex Fulton's father. "You document everything," the reporter said to Eli between shots. "This is exactly what the community needs." Behind them, quilts caught lamplight, each square a different pattern, different hand, but stitched together into something whole. The church women had worked through decades of meetings to create them, their own form of prayer. Parents chatted over coffee from a donated urn. Children traded books like treasures. The elderly claimed chairs near the radiator, watching the young ones with eyes that remembered other winters, other gatherings in this same space. "Daddy, look!" Gracie pulled him to the window. Outside, more people approached through the dark families he'd never met, drawn by warm light and open doors. The sidewalk that had been empty for years now carried footsteps of purpose. For this moment, this perfect, suspended moment, everything Laverne dreamed lived and breathed. The barbershop wasn't just open, it was alive. Eli felt her presence in every corner, every laugh, every page turned. The fear would return tomorrow. The court dates, the contests, the reviews. But tonight, surrounded by neighbors becoming family, Eli understood what Laverne meant about doors staying open. They weren't just letting people in. They were letting hope out. 2 nights after the soft opening, Eli jolted awake to acrid smoke filling his lungs. Not the memory of cigarettes from the hospital parking lot or burnt coffee from the break room, real smoke, thick and choking. "Gracie!" He stumbled through the dark apartment above the barber shop, following the wall to her makeshift room. Orange light flickered through the floorboards. The crackling sound below wasn't the old radiator. Fire. Gracie lay curled under her quilt, coughing in her sleep. He scooped her up, her small body going rigid with panic as she woke. "Daddy, hold your breath, baby. Hold it." Down the narrow stairs, smoke thickening with each step. The back room glowed like hell's mouth, flames eating through the door frame, books curling into ash. The quilts God, the quilts the church women had stitched. He kicked the front door open and stumbled onto the sidewalk. December air slapped their faces. Gracie wheezed against his shoulder, that terrible whistle he knew too well. "My inhaler, we'll get it. Breathe slow, in through your nose." But she couldn't. Each breath came shorter, tighter. Her fingernails dug into his neck as she fought for air. Sirens wailed closer. Neighbors spilled from their homes in robes and slippers. Mrs. Chen pressed her phone to her ear, giving the address again and again. Rev. Cole appeared from nowhere with a blanket, wrapping it around them both. "Is she—" "Asthma attack." Eli kept his voice level, though his hands shook. "She needs a nebulizer." The fire trucks arrived in a chaos of lights and shouts. Firefighters dragged hoses toward the barber shop while paramedics surrounded Gracie. They fitted the oxygen mask over her face, but her lips had already taken on that bluish tinge that made Eli's chest cave in. "We're taking her to General." Eli climbed into the ambulance without looking back. Through the small window, he watched flames pierce the barbershop roof, sending 40 years of dreams into the night sky. The ER at County General hadn't changed, same fluorescent glare, same antiseptic smell that couldn't quite mask human fear. Eli knew these halls, these faces. 3 days ago, he'd walked them as a nurse. Now he sat helpless while Dr. Morrison treated his daughter. "She's stable." Morrison's tone carried judgment. But what was she doing in a construction zone? With her medical history. "We were living upstairs temporarily while—" "Living there?" Morrison's eyebrows rose. "Eli, you know better. Paint fumes, dust, old building materials, for an asthmatic child?" Each word landed like a physical blow. Eli had known the risks, had told himself it was temporary, just until things stabilized. But nothing had stabilized. Everything had burned. "The fire investigator needs to speak with you," a police officer said from the doorway. "When you're ready." Ready? Eli wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. Gracie slept now, the nebulizer having done its work. Her chest rose and fell steadily, but she looked so small in the hospital bed, so vulnerable. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Mr. Brooks, this is Janet Hoffman from Hoffman Associates. We represent the Mayfield family members contesting Laverne Mayfield's will. Given tonight's events and the dangerous conditions you exposed a minor to, we're filing an emergency injunction to freeze all property transfers pending full review." The phone slipped from his numb fingers. Dawn came gray and bitter. Eli stood outside the barber shop, what remained of it. The back room had collapsed entirely. Water from the fire hoses had destroyed most of what the flames hadn't reached. Gracie's poster floated in a puddle, purple ink bleeding into nothing. Tasha stood at the police tape, holding the lockbox they'd saved from the bank. Somehow, she'd thought to grab it during the chaos. "They're saying electrical fire," she said quietly. "Old wiring." But her eyes said what they both suspected. Rex Fulton's car had been parked across the street again yesterday, watching, waiting. "I shouldn't have pushed so hard," Eli said. "Grandma would have pushed harder." His phone rang. The hospital. "Eli?" His supervisor's voice, careful and formal. "I need you to come in this afternoon. Not for a shift. HR wants to see you." The HR office felt smaller than before. The same stern administrator sat behind her desk, but now she had printouts, social media posts, comment threads, accusations. Male nurse inherits fortune from female patient. Elderly woman manipulated in final days. These are trending, Eli. The hospital board is concerned about our reputation. None of that is true. Truth doesn't trend. She folded her hands. Effective immediately. You're suspended pending full investigation. Turn in your badge. The badge slipped from his fingers onto her desk. 5 years of night shifts, 5 years of holding hands and saving lives, reduced to a piece of plastic. That evening, Eli drove Gracie back to their original rental, the cramped apartment with the leaking kitchen sink and the neighbor who played music too loud. She hadn't spoken since leaving the hospital. "Baby, I'm sorry. It's not your fault." Her voice came out scratchy. "The fire." But it was. Everything was. He'd dragged her into this dream, and the dream had literally gone up in smoke. Tomorrow, there would be lawyers and social workers and questions about his fitness as a father. The bent key Laverne had given him sat heavy in his pocket, the only thing he'd grabbed. "For when I can't sing," she'd said. Eli couldn't sing now, could barely breathe. Everything he'd built, everything she'd trusted him with, lay in wet ashes. The door stayed closed. Morning came without mercy. Eli's neck screamed from the angle he'd kept all night, slumped in the kitchen chair he dragged next to Gracie's bed. His eyes burned from staying awake, counting each of her breaths, watching for any hitch or wheeze that might signal another attack. The inhaler sat within arm's reach on the nightstand, next to the glass of water he'd refilled twice in the darkness. Gracie's face looked peaceful now, the blue tinge gone from her lips, replaced by healthy pink. But he couldn't unsee at that moment in the smoke when she'd gasped and found no air. His hands lay useless in his lap, hands that had saved strangers, administered CPR, started IVs in moving ambulances. Yet they'd failed to protect his own daughter from the danger he'd put her in. The kitchen sink dripped its familiar rhythm. 3 drops, pause. 2 drops, pause. The landlord had never fixed it. The walls seemed closer than before, pressing in with their water stains and peeling paint. This was reality. Not the dream of the barbershop apartment with its window nook where Gracie had spun in circles, imagining her drawings on every wall. She stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Daddy? Right here, baby. Did you sleep?" He smoothed her hair instead of answering. She didn't need to carry his exhaustion, too. That afternoon, while Mrs. Chen from next door watched Gracie, Eli stood before the barbershop, or what remained. Plywood covered the windows like bandages over wounds that wouldn't heal. The smell of char hung thick, even 2 days later. Rev Hen Cole waited by the door, his usual steady presence somehow heavier today. They stood together in silence, surveying the damage. "Insurance investigator came by this morning, Rev," Cole said finally. "Says it'll take weeks to determine cause. Weeks they didn't have. The will contest hearing was in 10 days. The custody review in 12. I'm done." The words scraped out of Eli's throat. "I can't risk Gracie. Not for this. Rev." Cole nodded slowly, as if he'd expected this. "If I sign the deed over to the cousins, maybe they'll drop everything. Maybe HR will see I'm not trying to profit. Maybe the court will see I'm putting my daughter first. Maybe, Rev." Cole reached into his coat pocket. "Laverne thought you might hit this wall." The envelope was cream-colored, Eli's name written in Laverne's careful script. The edges were soft, as if Reverend Cole had been carrying it for a while. "She gave me this months ago, said I'd know when." Eli took it with trembling fingers but couldn't open it. Not here, surrounded by failure. The kitchen table wobbled when he set the envelope down. Same table where he'd first read about the deed, where hope had bloomed for exactly 17 days before burning to nothing. Gracie was coloring at the other end, working on something with her good markers, the ones they saved for special projects. She hadn't asked about going back to the barbershop. Smart girl. She already knew. The paper inside was thin, Laverne's handwriting smaller than usual, as if she'd had much to say in limited space. "Dear Eli, if you're reading this, the storm has come. Not the blizzard that brought us together, but the kind that makes good people question whether goodness is worth the cost. I need you to know something. That barbershop survived 3 fires. 1 in 1,000, 962, when folks didn't want black and white customers sharing space. Another in 1968, after Martin died and grief turned to rage. The third in 1981, when the economy collapsed and developers wanted the corner lot. Each time someone said, "Enough. This door stays closed." Each time someone else said, "No. We rebuild." The words blurred. Eli wiped his eyes. When the air fills with smoke, sing, child. Song is just breath choosing hope. The bent key I gave you? My William bent it, prying open the door after the second fire. He said bent keys open doors that shouldn't exist but do anyway. I'm not asking you to be strong. I'm asking you to let others hold you up when you can't stand. That's not weakness. That's the only way any door stays open together. Promise me you'll keep singing. Even if it's just humming, even if your throat burns. The door only closes when we stop believing someone needs to walk through it. All my love, Laverne P. S. Check with Tasha. That girl has more of me in her than she knows. The letter floated to the table as Eli's shoulders shook. All these weeks trying to be strong, to carry everything alone, when Laverne had been telling him the opposite. Small arms wrapped around him from behind. Gracie pressed her face against his back. "Daddy?" He turned, pulled her onto his lap, this precious girl who'd inherited her mother's heart and her father's stubbornness. "I'm scared, baby. I'm scared of losing you, of failing everyone." She considered this with the seriousness only children could manage. "Remember when I couldn't breathe in the smoke?" she asked. "You sang to me, in the ambulance, the song about blessed insurance. Assurance. That one." She placed her small hand on his chest, right over his heart. "You were scared, but you sang anyway. That's what made me brave enough to keep trying to breathe." The wisdom of 10 years old, delivered with such certainty. "We can still sing, Daddy." She showed him her drawing the barber shop, but different, rising from the ashes like some kind of phoenix, with music notes floating from its windows. "Even if our voices are scratchy." That's what Mrs. Laverne would say. Eli held his daughter close, feeling something shift inside his chest. Not hope exactly, not yet, but maybe the possibility of hope. The bent key in his pocket pressed against his ribs, insisting that some doors, once opened, refused to stay closed. Tomorrow there would be lawyers and battles and people who thought they knew the whole story. But tonight, in this cramped apartment with its leaking sink and thin walls, a father and daughter hummed a hymn about blessed assurance. The song was rough and imperfect. It was enough. The knock came while Eli was washing breakfast dishes, his hands still pruned from scrubbing the same plate 3 times. Through the peephole, Tasha stood in the hallway, shifting her weight like she might bolt. "Can I come in?" She'd never been to their rental. Her eyes swept the cramped space, the water stain on the ceiling, Gracie's drawings covering every bare wall, the medical textbooks stacked as a makeshift table leg. "Gracie's at school." "Good." Tasha gripped her phone with both hands. "I need to show you something." The messages filled her screen. Screenshot after screenshot, saved methodically like evidence for a trial. Eli recognized the cousin's name, Marcus, the one who'd confronted them at the barber shop, shouting about family rights, got the first payment from Fulton, $5K just to file papers. Another $10K when the will gets thrown out. Old lady should have left it to blood anyway. The timestamp showed 3 weeks ago, before the fire. "There's more." Tasha scrolled, her jaw tight. "He's been bragging in our family group chat. Thought he was being clever, deleting them after, but I screenshot everything. Habit from dealing with my mom's boyfriends." More messages appeared. Rex Fulton's name peppered throughout. Plans to subdivide the lot. A wine bar where the barbershop stood. Luxury condos above. Fulton says once the nurse gives up, whole block opens up. Easy money. Let white boy take the heat while we get paid. Eli's stomach turned. Not just at the betrayal, but at how casually Marcus had sold out Laverne's legacy. "I think Grandma wanted me to find this." Tasha's voice cracked. She always said I noticed things others missed, like I was keeping score of every hurt. The girl stood rigid in his kitchen, 17 years old and carrying wounds Eli could only guess at. She'd grown up shuttled between relatives, watching her grandmother pour love into a barber shop and a church and strangers, while Tasha got birthday cards and awkward holiday dinners. Why show me? Because Rex Fulton's trying to erase her. The words came fierce and fast. Marcus doesn't care about the barber shop. Neither does my mom. They just want money. But Rex? He wants to pretend she never existed, turn the whole neighborhood into somewhere she couldn't afford to live. Tasha pulled up a website on her phone. Fulton Development's vision for the district: glass and steel towers, yoga studios and craft breweries. Not a single black face in the architectural renderings. Grandma marched down Main Street in 1963, got a brick thrown at her head for trying to register voters. She kept that brick on her mantel, said it was proof that some folks feared what happened when doors opened. The girl's hands shook now. I was angry at her, still am maybe. She had all this love, and I got scraps, but I won't let them turn her into nothing. Into some footnote they demolish. Eli thought of Laverne's letter. Check with Tasha. That girl has more of me in her than she knows. We need to take this to Marisol, my social worker. She'll know how to use it. The custody lady. She's more than that. Eli grabbed his coat. She knows how to fight systems, make them work for people instead of against them. Tasha nodded but didn't move. I don't trust Easy, she said. Been burned too many times. But Grandma trusted you. In the hospital, in her letters, she kept saying you understood about doors. I'm still learning what she meant. Yeah, well, Tasha pocketed her phone. Maybe we figure it out together. Marisol's office smelled like strong coffee and the vanilla candle she kept lit despite building regulations. She studied the screenshots with the intensity of someone who'd spent decades documenting injustice. This changes everything. She made copies, organized them chronologically. Bribery, conspiracy to defraud, elder abuse by proxy. Will it stop the injunction? Eli asked. It'll do more than that. Judge Harrison hates developers who prey on grieving families. Lost his own mother's house that way. Tasha sat beside Eli, her knee bouncing with nervous energy. Marisol noticed, softened her tone. You did the right thing. Your grandmother would be proud. She'd be disappointed it got this far. Tasha's honesty cut sharp. She always said family could break your heart worse than strangers. But she also believed in redemption, Eli offered. Second chances. Maybe. Tasha stood. I'm not there yet, but I won't let Rex Fulton steal what's left of her. That evening, Eli heated tomato soup from a can while Gracie set the table with their mismatched bowls. She'd been quiet since school, working on something at the coffee table with the focus she usually reserved for important projects. Rough day? He asked. Kaylee said the barber shop's gone forever, that her dad drives by and it's all black and ugly. The soup bubbled. Eli stirred it carefully. What did you say? Nothing. I was drawing. After dinner, she showed him the barber shop, but transformed. Not rebuilt exactly, the smoke marks were still there, dark smudges on the brick, but lights poured from every window. People stood in the doorway. Music notes floated up like prayers. It's beautiful, baby. It's not pretend. She said it firmly, like defending a thesis. The hurt parts are still there, but the light's bigger. Eli taped it above her bed, next to the courage poster and the sketch of Laverne's hands. Their rental walls had become a gallery of hope, stubborn and insistent. Gracie climbed under her covers, inhaler on the nightstand, Mr. Bunny tucked close. Daddy? Yeah? Are we done? Like Kaylee said? Eli kissed her forehead, thought of Tasha's screenshots, Marisol's determined face, Reverend Cole's steady faith, the bent key in his pocket. Laverne's words about doors that refused to close. No, baby, we're not done yet. She smiled, satisfied, and closed her eyes. Eli sat beside her bed, humming softly until her breathing steadied into sleep. Through the thin walls he heard their neighbor's television, a dog barking, the city living its ordinary life. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and arguments and people deciding whether Laverne's dream deserved to survive. But tonight, a father kept watch over his daughter, and somewhere across town, a 17-year-old girl guarded evidence of truth on her phone. The door remained cracked open, waiting. 2 days passed in a blur of sleepless preparation. Eli almost didn't go to the witness night. Standing in his bathroom mirror that evening, he saw what everyone else must see: hollow eyes, 3 days of stubble, the weight of suspension hanging on him like a coat too heavy for his shoulders. "Daddy, we're gonna be late," Gracie called from the living room, already in her good dress, the one with tiny flowers that reminded him of his wife. "Maybe you should go with Mrs. Chen, next door." "No." She appeared in the doorway, hands on her hips. "We go together, or not at all." That's what Grandma Laverne would say. The child had spoken. The church basement hummed with voices before they even reached the bottom step. Eli hesitated at the threshold, but Gracie pulled him forward into a room transformed. Folding chairs arranged in circles rather than rows, coffee urns and cookie platters on long tables, photos of Laverne displayed on poster boards: young Laverne with a picket sign, middle-aged Laverne at a school board meeting, elderly Laverne surrounded by choir members. People Eli recognized, and many he didn't, filled every corner. There was Mrs. Rodriguez from the second floor of their rental, the one who always complained about noise but had left soup at their door after the fire. Tom Bennett, the hardware store owner who donated paint the entire night shift from the hospital, even though HR had probably warned them against coming. Rev Cole stood at the front, not behind a podium but simply among the chairs. "We're here to witness," he began, his voice carrying without shouting, "not to argue or persuade or make a case, just to remember what Laverne Mayfield meant to this town, what she still means." The stories came slowly at first. An elderly white woman named Margaret stood, voice trembling. 1971. My husband left me with 3 babies and no degree. Laverne, she didn't know me from Adam, but she heard through someone at church, showed up with formula, diapers, and a schedule. She watched my kids while I went to night school, never took a penny. A young black man in an army uniform spoke next. She paid for my SAT prep. Didn't make a fuss about it, just left the check in my mama's mailbox with a note. "Doors open both ways, your turn to walk through." Story after story. A Latino teenager who got violin lessons. A white contractor who received a loan when banks wouldn't touch him after prison. Each tale another thread in the tapestry of a life lived deliberately, quietly revolutionary. Eli watched Tasha in the corner, arms crossed, fighting between cynicism and something softer. When Rev. Cole called her name, she shook her head, then stood anyway. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the ledger. "I spent years hating her for choosing this town over me. But maybe." She opened to a marked page. Maybe she was choosing both. She read, "Dear Mrs. Mayfield, you don't know me, but you saved my life. The scholarship you gave me wasn't just money, it was belief. Someone believed a girl from the trailer park could become a nurse. I promised to pay it forward. I promised to keep doors open for others. Signed, Caroline Brooks." The room went still. Eli felt Gracie's hand slip into his. "That was my mom," Gracie whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Tasha continued reading. "P.S. I met someone. A Marine who understands about service. If we have children, I'll teach them what you taught me. Love is a door that stays open." Applause broke like a dam. Eli stood on unsteady legs. The room quieted. "I worked 3 days straight before I met Laverne Mayfield. I was running on empty, trying to hold everything together with tired hands. She saw through me immediately." He looked at the faces, some supportive, some skeptical, all listening. She asked who was checking on me. I didn't have an answer. Still don't, most days. But she left me something more than property. She left me a responsibility. He pulled the bent key from his pocket. This opened her lockbox. But it's meant to open more. I'm not here to take what isn't mine. I'm here to keep the door open, just as she asked. Not because I'm special or chosen, but because she believed that a tired nurse and a determined community could transform an old barbershop into something sacred. That's right, someone called out. Tell it, another voice added. But I can't do it alone, Eli's voice cracked. I'm suspended from work. They're questioning my ethics, my fitness as a father. The building's half burned. The relatives want it sold. Rex Fulton wants it demolished. Rex Fulton wants a lot of things, Mrs. Rodriguez said loudly. Doesn't mean he gets them. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Tom Bennett stood. I've got lumber sitting in my warehouse. Good wood, just waiting. I've got an electrician's license, called out someone else. My Sunday school class can paint, added a teacher. One by one, they stood, offering skills, time, money, prayers. The veterinarian who'd treated Gracie's asthma attack, the librarian who'd known Laverne for 40 years, even Dr. Morrison from the ER, the one who'd scolded Eli about Gracie's exposure to smoke. I was wrong, Morrison said simply. A man trying to build something better for his daughter isn't reckless. He's doing what fathers do. The meeting lasted past Gracie's bedtime. She fell asleep in Eli's arms while voices continued planning, organizing, remembering. Rev. Cole produced sign-up sheets. Tasha and 2 other teenagers created a social media campaign on the spot. The room buzzed with the energy of people remembering they were a community, not just individuals surviving in parallel. As Eli carried Gracie to the car, Marisol appeared beside him. The judge wants to see us Monday. With Tasha's evidence in this. She gestured to the packed parking lot, neighbors exchanging numbers and making plans. We've got more than a case. We've got a movement. Eli nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. In his arms, Gracie stirred. Daddy? Did we win? Not yet, baby, but we're not alone anymore. Good, she mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. Grandma Laverne hated alone. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. Eli adjusted Gracie's scarf in the courthouse parking lot, while Marisol reviewed papers one last time. Remember, Marisol said, let Tasha tell her story. Let the evidence speak. Through the courthouse windows, Eli saw them gathering neighbors with handmade signs, Rev. Cole organizing a prayer circle on the steps. Someone had painted, Keep Laverne's legacy alive on an old bedsheet. Inside, the courtroom smelled of old wood and floor polish. The relative's lawyer sat rigid, Rex Fulton behind him in a pressed suit. The cousin who'd taken Rex's money avoided everyone's eyes. Judge Harrison, a woman with silver hair and careful hands, reviewed the documents. Miss Mayfield, you may proceed. Tasha stood slowly. She wore her grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones from the lockbox. My grandmother and I didn't always get along. Her voice started thin but strengthened. I thought she loved this town more than me. Maybe she did. But now I understand why. She pulled out her phone, hands steady now. These are texts from my mom's cousin Wayne, dated 3 weeks ago. She read, Fulton says $5,000 now. $10,000 when we get the deed. Easy money. Old lady's dead anyway. Wayne shifted in his seat. And this one. Rex has buyers lined up. Condos, wine bar, the works. Finally gonna clean up that corner. Objection. The relative's lawyer started, but Judge Harrison silenced him with a look. Continue, Miss Mayfield. Tasha scrolled further. Don't feel bad. Eli Brooks is nobody. Just some male nurse playing hero. Rex says the hospital's already investigating him. The judge's eyebrows rose. Mr. Fulton orchestrated the hospital complaint? Appears so, Your Honor, Marisol interjected, producing printed screenshots. We have documentation of anonymous complaints submitted from IP addresses linked to Mr. Fulton's development company. Rex's face remained smooth, but his lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Reverend Cole stood when called. He carried a manila folder yellowed with age. "Your Honor, this is the original deed to the barber shop, dated 1969. He opened it carefully. Jerome Mayfield, Laverne's late husband, included a covenant. The property must remain a barber shop or literacy space, quote, for all persons without respect to race, creed, or station. The judge examined the document. This is legally binding, verified by 3 attorneys, Your Honor. Any sale that violates this covenant is void. The relative's lawyer stood. Your Honor, covenants can be dissolved. Not this one. Reverend Cole interrupted. It was written after the shop was firebombed in 1968. Jerome rebuilt with the whole community's help, black, white, everyone. The covenant was their promise to each other. It's registered with the State Historical Society. The judge turned to Eli. Mr. Brooks, do you have anything to add? Eli stood, Gracie's drawing tucked in his jacket pocket for courage. I didn't ask for this gift. Part of me wishes Mrs. Mayfield had chosen someone stronger, someone with more resources. But she didn't want someone perfect. She wanted someone who understood that keeping doors open is daily work. He pulled out the bent key. She gave me this the night she died. Said it was for when she couldn't sing anymore. I thought she meant the lockbox, but she meant more. She meant for times when the song feels impossible. The judge studied him carefully. And you intend to honor the original covenant? Every word, Your Honor. Reading room, free clinic hours, open to all. My daughter and I will live upstairs, if you'll allow it. We'll be the caretakers. Even after the fire? Especially after the fire. The judge deliberated for 20 minutes. Through the windows, Eli saw the crowd growing, his co-workers from the hospital, parents from Gracie's school, veterans from his support group. I've reviewed all evidence, Judge Harrison announced. The pattern is clear. Mr. Fulton attempted to manipulate a family's grief for profit. The cousin accepted bribes to challenge a valid will. Most disturbing false complaints were filed to damage Mr. Brooks' professional standing. She looked directly at Rex. Mr. Fulton, while criminal charges are beyond this court's purview, I'm forwarding all documentation to the district attorney. Rex's jaw tightened. As for the will, I find no evidence of undue influence. Mrs. Mayfield's bequest stands. The property transfers to Mr. Brooks as trustee, bound by the original covenant. The courtroom erupted. Gracie jumped into Eli's arms. Tasha stood frozen until Marisol pulled her into a hug. Furthermore, the judge continued over the noise, the cousin must return any money received from Mr. Fulton. Those funds will go toward rebuilding what the fire destroyed. Outside, the crowd cheered as they emerged. Reporters pushed forward with cameras and questions. Eli tried to shield Gracie, but she pulled free. My daddy's going to fix the barber shop, she announced to the nearest microphone. It's going to have books and help sick people, and everybody can come. The crowd laughed and applauded. Rev. Cole started a hymn, We Shall Overcome, and voices joined in, filling the courthouse square. Eli's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Brooks? This is Director Thompson from HR. Eli's chest tightened. I'm calling to personally apologize. We've completed our investigation. The complaints were baseless, likely fraudulent. You've been reinstated effective immediately, with full back pay. I thank you. No, Mr. Brooks, thank you. What you're doing for this community, what Mrs. Mayfield saw in you, we should have seen it too. We'd like to partner with the Laverne House for community health screenings, if you'll have us. Eli looked at the crowd, at Tasha teaching Gracie a clapping game, at Rev. Cole embracing veterans and teachers alike. We'll have you, he said. Doors stay open here. That evening, standing in the damaged barber shop with Gracie, Eli hung the bent key on a nail by the door. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tonight, for the first time in months, the ground felt solid beneath his feet. Spring came gently to the town, melting the last stubborn patches of snow that clung to the courthouse steps. The barber shop stood wrapped in scaffolding like a patient in recovery, but inside, life stirred. Eli measured boards while Jim Patterson, a contractor from Rev. Cole's congregation, cut them to size. Jim had shown up the day after the court ruling with his truck full of tools. "Union work for 30 years, Jim had said. Never built anything that mattered this much. Now, 3 weeks into reconstruction, volunteers filled every corner. Veterans from Eli's old unit hauled debris. Church ladies sorted book donations in the front room. The smell of sawdust mixed with fresh paint and the coffee Mrs. Chen brewed on a camp stove. "Daddy, look," Gracie called from her perch on a stepladder. She'd painted a rainbow on the children's reading corner shelf. Paint speckled her overalls and streaked her cheek. "Beautiful. Baby girl." Tasha said, "We need more yellow." Across the room, Tasha knelt beside boxes of donated books, her mother Sharon helping sort them by reading level. The reconciliation hadn't been instant or easy. Sharon had arrived 2 weeks ago, thin-lipped and wary, but when she saw Tasha teaching neighborhood kids in the half-finished space, something shifted. "Mom used to bring me here," Sharon told Eli that first day, "when I was little, before everything got complicated." Now mother and daughter worked side by side, occasionally touching hands as they passed books between them. Brooks called Marcus, another Marine from Eli's unit. "Where do you want this blood pressure station?" "Southeast corner, near the window. Natural light helps older folks read the numbers." The insurance payout from Laverne's policy had covered materials barely. But when word spread, money arrived in unexpected ways. The Veterans of Foreign Wars chapter raised $8,000 at their pancake breakfast. 3 different churches took special collections. Even the hospital staff pooled donations, despite the awkwardness of Eli's suspension. "Looking good in here," Marisol said, stepping through the plastic sheeting that served as a temporary door. Child Services signed off on the living space upstairs. "You're clear." Relief washed through Eli. The apartment remained untouched by fire damage, a miracle, the fire chief had called it. He and Gracie had moved in the week before, their few possessions fitting easily in the 2 small bedrooms. "Coffee, Mrs.?" Chen offered Marisol a paper cup. "Bless you." The rhythm of hammering filled the space. Eli lost himself in it, measuring, cutting, sanding. His hands, trained to insert IVs and check vitals, adapted to the tools. Each board placed felt like setting a bone, each painted wall like fresh bandages on old wounds. "You missed a spot," Tasha said, pointing to the baseboard he was painting. "Your grandmother would have caught that too." "She caught everything," Tasha's voice softened. "I found more of her notebooks yesterday, lists of every kid she helped with homework, every dollar she saved for scholarships. Your wife's name appears 3 times. 3? Initial scholarship, book money sophomore year, and," Tasha hesitated, "money for prenatal vitamins when she was pregnant with Gracie." Eli's brush stilled. Another invisible thread connecting them all. "She never told anyone about the help," Tasha continued. "Just gave it. Mom thinks that's why family got so fractured. Grandma was so busy caring for strangers, we felt forgotten." "You weren't forgotten. That lockbox had your baby pictures, your report cards. I know that now." They painted in companionable silence until Gracie bounded over. "Tasha, will you read to us tonight? Please?" "Can't your dad? He does voices wrong. You do them perfect." Tasha glanced at Eli, who shrugged. "She's not wrong." By late afternoon, the main room stood transformed. Fresh white walls, refinished floors, shelves lined with books sorted by colorful labels Gracie had drawn. The barber chair, recovered from the fire and reupholstered by a local veteran, sat like a throne in the reading corner. "Quittin' time," Jim announced. "Easter Sunday tomorrow. Y'all coming to sunrise service?" "Wouldn't miss it," Eli said. The volunteers filtered out, leaving paintbrushes to soak and tools carefully arranged for Monday's work. Eli sent Gracie upstairs to wash paint from her hands while he and Tasha covered the supplies. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. The testimony, the evidence, but mostly for showing up. Grandma would haunt me if I didn't." She paused at the door. "That soft opening we tried before, we should do it right this time. Big celebration, show the whole town what we rebuilt. When we're ready. We're ready now. The bones are good, the rest is just decoration." After she left, Eli stood alone in the space. Late afternoon sun slanted through new windows, turning sawdust motes into golden specks. The ghost of smoke damage lingered only in his memory now. That evening, after leftover soup and homework, Gracie fell asleep in her narrow bed, one arm flung over her sketchbook. Eli tucked her quilt higher, then climbed the narrow stairs to the apartment's single window overlooking Main Street. The town spread quiet below streetlights beginning to flicker on, the Methodist church bell tower catching the last light. Through the barber shop's front window, he could see the bent key hanging on its nail, waiting for Monday's volunteers. "Thank you," he whispered into the dim light. It was the first real prayer he'd managed since his wife died, not desperate pleading or angry demands, just gratitude. Laverne's words came back, "When the air fills with smoke, sing." He hummed the opening notes of Blessed Assurance, the hymn he'd sung to her that final night. His voice cracked at first, then steadied. The melody filled the small apartment, drifting down to where Gracie slept, out through the open window into the spring evening. Tomorrow was Easter. New life, resurrection. Stones rolled away. The work would continue Monday, more painting, more sorting, the eternal daily choice to keep doors open. But tonight, in this rebuilt space that held both sorrow and hope, Eli sang. The morning arrived, dressed in spring glory. Eli stood at the bathroom mirror, adjusting his one good tie, the navy one his wife had bought him years ago. Through the open window, he could already hear voices gathering on the sidewalk below. "Daddy, I can't find my yellow dress. Check the closet. Left side." Gracie thundered down the narrow stairs minutes later, dress found, hair ribbons trailing. She spun once in the middle of the barber shop's main room, admiring how the space caught morning light. "It's perfect." Almost. Eli retrieved the bent key from his pocket, the one Laverne had pressed into his palm that night in bed 412. He'd carried it through everything, the fire, the court battles, the long nights of doubt. Now he hung it on a small nail beside the doorway, at child's height, where small hands could touch it for luck or courage. Outside, Main Street transformed. The Methodist church choir assembled in bright purple robes, warming up with scales that floated like butterflies. Tables appeared borrowed from 3 different churches, laden with casseroles, pies, and misses. Chen's famous egg rolls. Someone had strung lights between the lampposts, though it was barely noon. "They're all here for Grandma," Tasha said, appearing at Eli's elbow. She wore a simple blue dress, her grandmother's pearl earrings catching light. "For all of us." "Rev." Cole's voice boomed from the sidewalk. 15 minutes, people." "Choir, take your positions." The crowd swelled. Eli recognized faces from the hospital nurses off shift, the janitor who always asked about Gracie, even the stern administrator from HR who offered a tight nod. Veterans from his support group stood in a cluster, dress uniforms pressed. Parents held children's hands, pointing at the new sign above the door. "The Laverne House. Doors stay open here." Marisol pushed through the crowd, clipboard in hand. "The mayor's here." "Local news too. You ready?" "No." "Good. Ready people make terrible speeches." At noon precisely, the choir launched into "Wade in the Water." Their voices rose and fell like waves, pulling the crowd closer. Eli stood with Gracie and Tasha at the door, holding an oversized pair of scissors borrowed from the elementary school. Reverend Cole stepped forward, his voice carrying without a microphone. "We gather today not to celebrate a building, but a promise kept. Laverne Mayfield believed in open doors, not just the kind you walk through, but the kind you carry in your heart. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. She saw potential where others saw problems. She invested in futures when the present looked bleak. And when she knew her time was short, she made sure her legacy would outlive her. He gestured to Eli. She chose a guardian who knew about keeping watch through long nights. The choir hummed softly behind him. "Love, Revered," Cole said, his voice rising, "is a door we never close. Not to strangers, not to family who've wandered far, not to those who look different or pray different or love different. Laverne knew this. She lived this. And now," he stepped aside with a sweeping gesture, "we continue this." Tasha and Gracie held the ribbon while Eli positioned the scissors. "On 3, Gracie whispered. 1, 2. The ribbon fell away. The crowd surged forward, children racing for the reading corner while their parents admired the transformed space. The barber chair had been draped with one of Laverne's quilts, books lined every wall, and a blood pressure station occupied one corner where 2 nursing students were already checking seniors. "Just like she wanted," someone murmured. Eli moved through the crowd in a daze. Hands clapped his shoulder, voices offered congratulations, but everything felt distant until a young woman approached, barely 20, wearing scrubs under her jacket. "Mr. Brooks? I'm Keisha. I just graduated nursing school. I heard about the free clinic hours you're starting, Wednesday evenings, Saturday mornings. I'd like to volunteer, if you'll have me." Eli studied her eager face, remembering his own first days as a nurse, the desperate need to help, to matter. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his stethoscope, the one he'd carried through 3 deployments and countless night shifts. He'd polished it that morning until it gleamed. "Carry the song forward," he said, pressing it into her hands. Her eyes widened. "I can't. This is yours. Now it's yours. But there's a catch." He nodded toward the blood pressure station where seniors were already lining up. "You start now." She practically ran to the station, stethoscope already around her neck. The afternoon bloomed into evening. Children sprawled on cushions while Tasha read stories, her voice carrying different characters with practiced ease. Parents browsed the shelves, finding books they'd loved as children. The choir performed twice more, their harmonies drawing people from blocks away. Gracie found Eli during a quiet moment, tugging him to the window. "Look, Daddy." Outside, Rex Fulton's sleek car idled at the corner. Through the windshield, they could see him watching the celebration. Then, without acknowledgement or gesture, he drove away. "He lost," Gracie said simply. "No, sweetheart, we won." As sunset approached, the crowd gradually thinned. Volunteers stayed to clean, moving with the easy rhythm of people who'd found their place. Eli stood in the doorway, watching Keisha check one last blood pressure, seeing Tasha help a child sound out words, feeling Gracie's hand slip into his. For the first time since that night, his wife slipped away since he'd stood in another doorway watching taillights disappear. Eli felt the truth of it. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was home. The bent key caught the last light of day, and somewhere in the distance, church bells began their evening song. If you enjoyed the story, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.